Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Donation. And this is kind of a special episode that I'm really excited about because what it really represents is a bit of a shift in this next season of Beyond the Donation and what we're going to do. And really to get us kicked off, I want to introduce my new co-host for the Beyond the Donation podcast, Noah Barnett, our Chief Strategy Officer here at DonorDock. Noah, super excited to do this with you.
Absolutely, Matt. Thanks for inviting me. It's been incredible. I've loved being a part of the DonorDock team, but also just being in and around this sector. And I'm excited about this shift that we're making to the podcast, at least for this season, where we can begin focusing on the things that we hear the most from nonprofit leaders. Historically, you've spent a lot of time interviewing leaders, which is incredible. And we get to hear their story and how they're changing or how they're helping their organizations thrive. And now we get to kind of reflect back ourselves and say, what have we learned? What have we heard? What are we seeing? Because right now, I think we're in a pivotal shift that leaders are having to navigate across a bunch of different vectors. And we want to come alongside you in that journey and just be another voice and guide along that way. So I'm excited to be here, Matt.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. I think, as you said, we've had this really distinct pleasure over the last year or almost 2 years now of being able to have such awesome guests come on and talk with us and share insight, share expertise, all of the above. And we may still have some guests here and there that we invite on to the podcast, but we've really been leaning into this idea at DonorDock that it's not always about just getting more done, because I think we hear that and there's just pressure in society today that it's just, you got to get more done and check more boxes off. And we've had this realization that honestly, what's really powerful is being able to focus and get the most important things done every single day, not necessarily more. And I think that theme is going to be something that over this next, over these episodes that we have coming up, that we're going to really dig into that. And what is the most important things? When we talk about that, what do we mean? And how do you figure that out? And just so many good topics that I think will be really helpful to our listeners as they're trying to navigate, some of the challenges that we hear over and over again. And, I've got too many things to do, the should list, and that keeps getting bigger and all of the above. So super excited about this,
Absolutely. And I think if I can comment, Matt,
Yeah.
I think if you're listening right now and you just heard the word more and you got tingly a little bit, because I think that's really the default gear that nonprofit leaders really operate in, which is more. And it's more, you're kidding me, right? But I want to highlight, Matt didn't just say more. Matt said, what if we stop doing more? That sink in. Is that even possible? I think if I'm the listener right now, I'm are you guys crazy? I'm going to turn this off. This is insane. I have to do more. I have to do more. That's my job. Yeah, I want to take you on a journey. So if you feel that right now, what we're trying to ask is come with us on this, because we've been exploring this for the last 6 months, which is, what if you stop doing more and you start only doing what matters most? What does that mean? What does that look like? And so again, I just want to highlight that, Matt, on I'm excited, and I know someone's listening right now and being okay, so at the end of this podcast, I'm going to have more to do after this. That's not our goal. We're really coming alongside and saying, how do we reframe this question of what are we actually trying to accomplish by doing more? When the board asks us to do more, our team asks us to do more, donors ask us to do more, our programs need more. How do we actually accomplish that by not doing more? So let's get into
something, it's something that we're not just looking at and saying, this is what nonprofit, leaders and fundraisers need to be doing. We're doing this internally at DonorDock. These are questions we're asking ourselves every single day, because ultimately there's so much power in this line of thinking. And there's something really freeing about being able to look at things and say, I can let this go because it's not actually moving the needle. That's been really hard. Quite honestly, that's been hard for me in a few different scenarios. But at the end of the day, there is something that really is powerful about that line of thinking. And I think even just we think about like, let's think about some of the, organizations that we work with, these nonprofits, these small teams. Like, in some ways, we wear the doing more as a badge of honor a little bit, like the
Mm,
idea of, we hear it all the time. Like, we even have a marketing campaign around, like, I wear a lot of hats, and there, you hear that all the time. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. But one of the questions in my mind is, which of those hats can you take off and it's not going to hurt your organization, it's actually going to help it,
no, indeed. And then again, I think we're not trying to say we figured it all out either.
right?
But what we hope to do, especially in this first episode where we're kicking this off, is present a series of opportunities to ask questions of things that maybe are just defaults that you've never even thought about putting down. I think one that stands out to me, which was kind of enlightening, is like, when can we stop posting on Facebook? And again, I don't mean like this is a very small example, but there was a point at which I was working with an organization. And it's like, Facebook's not working for us. Like, we're trying to make it work. We're trying to make it work, trying to make it work. And it's like, what if we just stop? It's like, we can't stop posting on Facebook. Are you crazy? And it's like, why not? Right. Like, and I think those are the types of questions, not just about Facebook, but it's like, what if we just stop doing that event that, like, at the end of the day takes up 3 months of our team's time and like it breaks even barely. Yes, it's a great event. It's a capstone thing, but like, what if that's not actually what you need to do? And that's taking up so much space in the cup that's why there's not margins to maybe explore some of these efficiency things or something simple. Matt, we've talked about this even internally. What if we just stop having that meeting on Tuesday? It's like, what do you mean that meeting? We love that meeting. We have that meeting every day. It's like, but what's it for? Like, we have a meeting on Monday. We have a meeting on Friday. Like, why do we have this meeting on Tuesday? Or Wednesday or whatever day you have a meeting internally? Like, where are there opportunities to give yourself back time, give your team back time that maybe it's just going through the motions. So those are the types of questions I think we're trying to wrestle with and ask together across whether it's our fundraising strategy, kind of like what's going on in the environment where everyone's telling us we should, but what must we do? What matters most for your organization?
No, when you think about this and you've been around this space for a very, very long time, you've worked in nonprofits, you've worked alongside nonprofits, 15 plus years. What are some examples of where, like, what does it look like when a nonprofit or the small team is trying to do too much? Like, what have you seen? Like, what are things that, like, this is what it looks like when you're trying to do too much?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think often what it looks like is we're kind of stuck in like reactive mode. And it's like, hey, like, I have this, I have to respond to this fire drill. There's always something to do. I have 300 emails in my inbox that I need to go work on. Like, we just lost, A, B, and C employee, and now someone really needs to pick up the slack there. And so it's kind of this reactive where you're kind of on your heels. Uh, that's often when like that might be a point in time when it's like, oh, wait, we're kind of getting stuck in this more as the strategy. It's just we have to do more. That's the strategy to get things done because like everything's coming at us over and over and over again. And so often that's when there's an opportunity to say, wait, let's put pause. And usually you have to be the leader to be able to do this often, or you have to have a really candid conversation with your leader and say, like, I just feel like every single week we come in and we just try to do more, more, more. We're in a reactive stance. Can we just pause, even just for a little bit, to kind of begin to create awareness around all of these areas that we're doing more? And can we actually just give space to ask the questions like, is that really necessary? Or why are we doing that again? I know it's important, but why is it important again? And so, again, you asked what it looks like. And it's like when you're just ending the week and you're like, I don't even know what I got done this week, but I'm just so thankful it's over. That might be an opportunity to kind of press pause and say, okay, well, let's just remember why we're doing certain things and kind of doing, there's an approach here. And maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit of like, how do you actually begin doing this, which is called zero-based prioritization. So zero-based accounting, if you're an accountant, which many of you probably aren't listening to this podcast, I'm sure. I'm not an accountant, but I guess there's like zero-based accounting or zero-based like financial planning, basically. And I heard someone say, well, we do zero-based planning each quarter. which is instead of starting with all the things we have to do and then working backwards and saying, oh, what do we have margin for to do this new initiative or to maybe work on, this project that keeps getting neglected? Like it's like a zero base. It's like, hey, we're going in and nothing is auto assumed in the plan. Like everything has to go through this process of like, is this something we're going to do in this next period of time? That could be a year, that could be a quarter, that could be even a week, but everything doesn't just get added to the list and then build upon. And so I think that's just an interesting approach that I've seen is like, how do we take that zero based thinking approach when we're thinking about our week, even just our day? Like, hey, I'm not going to assume I have to do anything today. And I'm going to be curious about what I have to do today or what I'm being asked to do today or should do today. And just ask this series of questions like, why am I doing this? How does it align with the goals we have? Wait, what are the goals? Okay, now I understand why we're doing this. And now I'm just reinforcing that.
Yeah. We touched on something with the idea of like the reactive mode, you know, and I'll be honest, like as a as an action oriented person who wants people to be feel good and be happy, and like sometimes that idea that I'm going to let a fire burn for a while because it's not the most important fire to put out for me right now is really difficult. Like how do you work through that, like because I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of people listening who kind of feel the same way, like I'm reactive because I feel like I got to put that fire out, but like sometimes we got to let a fire burn. How do you get that mentality? It's like it's hard for me, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be an overnight thing. And I don't think it's easy. I think I struggle with that. Like we just had a planning call yesterday, man. It's like, what is important? Like, do we have time to talk about this? Oh, shoot, we forgot to talk about these three things that we think are really important, right? Like, it's definitely a reality. And I think if you first just give yourself permission that you're not going to be perfect at this and be like, I'm not going to figure this out right away. I'm not going to adopt some mindset and like instantly all things are going to be peaceful amidst fires, right? Like, I just don't think that that's likely true. And so I would just start there. It's just like, this is a practice and a learning opportunity to think this way or to kind of reframe how you think about things. And thus, you have to give your permission that, like, I'm not going to be good at this on day one, but I'm at least going to try, you know? I think the second thing is just being like aware, like, of when this is happening. Like, how are we, like, where are we being reactive versus proactive? What's happening to us, me, our team, our organization, to our calendar that I have, like, feel like I have no control over? And so I think just first step, like, is taking even a week and saying, I'm not going to change anything, but I'm just going to become aware and maybe take notes of like when stuff is happening to me versus when like I'm intentionally choosing to be a part of something, or maybe where those fires are up and then be like, hey, this fire is burning. I'm going to go give attention to that. And so I think starting with that awareness is probably the first step. Well, first, having compassion that you're not going to be good at it and grace. I think then second, and that we're just humans and we're going to fail and fall down. And we all have, challenges that we need to work through. But I think the second thing is just becoming aware, like, where is this happening in our organization? Where is this happening to my schedule, my calendar, my inbox?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We keep using the word like, or words, focus on what matters most. uh that like how do people figure out what matters most? I mean, that's where the zero based, approach kind of comes in. Like you're kind of building from zero and you are building with what matters most at the foundation of it and kind of building up from there. But any ideas or thoughts around the people listening who is like, oh, I don't know how to tell what matters most today?
Yeah. And I think, the baseline question would be is like, well, why are we doing this? And to what end? I'll kind of relate this back to specifically like a fundraising campaign, but I think you can use similar questions within kind of even just like internal prioritization or even team management or in operations, which is like, first and foremost, we have to know what we're trying to accomplish. Like, we have to know the goals of what we're trying to do. And so for many of you listening to this, it might be, I have to raise X millions of dollars, or I have to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars this year. And I have to do that because our mission and our programs depend on that. And that's my responsibility. Like, most people listening to this are the ones responsible for some sort of fundraising goal or donor development based goal, even if it's a sub segment, like, oh, I need to get X amount of grants in, or I need to retain, acquire, and cultivate and steward, Y amount of donors. And so I think just getting clear on that and somehow making sure that that continues to be the top priority when you're looking at what then you are doing to accomplish those things. Second thing, once you think about the goals, which is who are the people and who are the participants in this? It's not just donors. It might just be volunteers. It might be your internal team. It might even just be yourself. Like, who needs to be involved for that to actually get accomplished? And like, what do we know about them? What needs to be true for us to actually have this goal achieved? So those things around questioning, like, what actually has to happen? What are the different, let's call it ingredients? Like if we're baking a cake or, we're making a gourmet meal. I've been watching The Bear lately, which is a brilliant show on Hulu. And so cooking's top of mind. But yeah, what are the ingredients that's going to take for us to deliver this meal at 5:55 p.m. when the first table arrives and expects their food? So what is that moment for you? And then what are all the ingredients you need to do? Then working backwards into, okay, well, how are we going to accomplish that? Or what are we doing that actually makes that possible? We have to go to the grocery store to get the ingredients. We have to have the different roles and stakeholders to be able to accomplish this. And all of that needs to add up and orchestrate into us hitting these goals. So that kind of process of actually like working backwards from the end, I think is where I've seen it drive success. How have you handled this? Like, how do you kind of define, Matt, like what matters
Yeah.
most?
Well, I think, I would agree 100% that you have to have a fairly clear picture of what you're trying to get to or what you're trying to achieve to be able to figure out what matters most to get there. So I 100% agree with that. I think the other piece of it is that focus is really important. And so, like, to use the restaurant analogy again, I've been watching a show. It's a Gordon Ramsay show. It's newer, also, I think, on Hulu, where he goes into a restaurant that's not doing well. And I think he's had a show like this before. This is a kind of a revamped version of it. And one of the things that I've seen on almost every single episode is that these restaurants that are failing have menus of 75 items, and so there's no chance that you're going to be able to do a great job of making 75 different items. You also have to have a lot of inventory and things to be able to do all of that. And so one of the things he really pushes them towards is focusing that menu down onto the 10 or 12 things they do best. And so I think there's some part of it there where it's like you have your goal figured out, and then the discipline to say, like, what are the 5 to 8 things that we can do that are most likely going to get us to that goal? And let's not add to the menu these other 70 items. And so I think, and that's difficult sometimes. Like, I think focus, in running a business, running a nonprofit, in so many different things, focus is actually one of the hardest things to be disciplined about keeping. And so I think that's another exercise, or when you're going through that, it's being honest with, like, we can't do everything. I mean, I think even when you started working with us at DonorDock over a year ago, when we first started looking at all the things that we were trying to do from a marketing and a sales and a growth perspective, and it's like, you can't do it all really, really well. What are the 3 things that you guys are doing really well? Let's focus on that. And I think for that carries through, I think, in how nonprofits need to think about how they're going to be funding their programs and various other things is what are the 5 things that we do really well that get us to this goal, and let's put our effort into those. And it is a discipline thing, and it's not an easy thing to do. Giving things up is hard, but that to me is clarity on the goal, and then what are the few things that will most likely get us to that goal, and that's what we're going to pour our time and our resources and our efforts into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like one thing that kind of came to mind when you were talking, Matt, is this idea that like we actually often don't even know what's working. Like there's someone's listening to this right now. It might be you right now listening to this. thinking like, I would have no idea what's working. I don't know what the three things are because we have 12, 15, 16 different things. And the challenge with that is you actually are right. You have no idea what's working and what's not working because there's so little focus across, let's call it 16 things or 12 things instead of maybe three, that you actually don't know what's good and what's bad and what's helpful and what's not helpful. And so even just being able to acknowledge that and being like, I actually have no idea what's working, Matt, Noah, like, come tell me what's working because I'm just managing all these things. I'm trying to keep every, pot in the restaurant. I don't even know like which menu items we could cut and still be fine. And that's really scary. I think that's what actually keeps us in the trap of doing more and more and more because we actually just don't know.
100%. And and I think in a scenario like that, again, not to just paint everything with the same brush, but it's like if you're in that position, you may not have the systems in place, the things that can help you answer that question. Like that might not be something that you may not know across all of these different channels, like what's effective. Like technology can help with that, of course. I think if you've got those things in place, but yeah, it can be a really like scary feeling. Like I can't give up all of these because if I give up one, that may be the one that's working and now I'm in a really bad spot. But there's also learning that can come from that. Part of this is if you don't know, like trying to start experimenting to figure it out can be something I think that could be helpful or that could be useful. But you got to be ready for, that if you figure it out by removing something, that you need to be ready to quickly add that back if that's something that is turning out to be successful. What are other ways that you think people that maybe don't know the answer can start to try and work towards that and figure that out?
Yeah, I think that again, that introspection of like acknowledging that we have too many things going on. So we actually don't know is the first step. I think the second step would saying, okay, well, we know a lot about even a little bit, right? And so what do we know? And so what I would begin doing is like parsing into categories, activities that are similar. And so if I was having a recipe and it's like, well, I have this ingredient and this ingredient, it's like, well, if both these ingredients are kind of trying to solve the same problem, like maybe I can actually just remove one. So I can group those together. Whereas like, let's say you only have one protein and it's like, no, this is supposed to be a protein dish. It's like, I can't remove the protein because like that's a core asset. That's like a fundamental like foundation of this dish, for example. And so I think beginning to say like, well, we're doing this stuff over here. Let's call it on social media or email marketing or all of these different things. And our intentions with these are just to keep our organization top of mind. We're sending emails, we're doing social posts, we're doing all of that. So I think then grouping those together and saying, okay, all of these different activities are actually intended to keep our nonprofit top of mind. Okay, that's really great. Then we actually have these other things that are foundational to our core giving. Like maybe we have a direct mail piece that we've been sending forever. It performs really well. It hasn't been growing year over year, but it brings in 25% of our donations every year by sending this direct mail piece. And that's the only mail piece we do. We have a lot of maybe legacy donors or older donors that, have always just given through check and mail. Like we can't necessarily pull that back because like that's the only thing of that we're doing. And so you could start in the awareness category and say, like, we're doing all of these different things. Which of these channels are maybe the best ones that, we feel like we have more ownership over or have a higher integrity to like, what our organization's about. And so maybe we focus on email marketing, but we're going to let like social media like fall to the wayside a little bit. And we're going to take a break from that because we can't focus on that plus doing email well. And so maybe we're going to say, hey, we're not sunsetting these forever, but we're going to really just focus on like making sure in the inbox we're doing a really, really great job. We're going to like dig into that further and we're going to kind of let this be a little bit less of a priority. That would just be another example. Or there's an event that's like, hey, this event takes up 60% of our time and brings in 5% of our donations. Everyone loves this event. But like the reality is it takes up 60% of our time and brings in 5% of our donations. It's like that might be like I'm not sure exactly the impact here, but like it's clearly if I do enough inspection on that, it might be like, man, like what could we do with 60% of our time? We're not going to cancel the event yet. But if we just like take the mental exercise and say path A is we do this, the same playbook. Path B is we take out that event, we give our team 60% back. 20% of that is actually going to go to well-being because our teams burn out. We still have 40% to respend and allocate. So we have a healthier team, a better rested team. And now we can focus on these other things. Like, how does that feel? Like, let's imagine that. There's a book called Designing Your Life, and they encourage you to design 3 separate lives that all could be true. And just like allow yourself to do that. And I feel like we can do that in our work, which is like, let's design 3 lives over the next 6 months or 1 month or 3 months and like see how they feel. Like, let's try them on. Like, we're trying on like different shirts and we're like, is green really my color? I'm not sure. Maybe black is really where I want to go, but I'm at least going to try on the green to see what that feels like. So those are just some exercises of giving yourself permission again to almost play. And I think when we're reactive and we're always going after more, we actually like lose sight of some of these like kind of childlike behaviors, but are actually extremely helpful when we're leading teams and kind of trying to break kind of where we're going because we need to make a change. Because what we're doing isn't working or what we're doing isn't actually getting the results that we want. And the challenge is that everything we're doing is like doesn't leave margin. And so we have to do that inspection to say we got to cut some stuff away. We got to remove weight. If you're a backpacker, you can't just like keep putting your favorite things in your backpack and being like, well, if I get lost in the woods, I need that stuffy from when I was 6. And it's like, if you get lost in the woods, like, I don't know if you need that, type thing. But what do I need? How do I limit the amount of stuff that I'm doing? Like, what is the path here that I can have the lightest pack to make myself as agile as possible while still having those core essentials and those kind of like what I would call like foundational nuts and bolts. And so understanding fundraising, understanding your organization, understanding marketing, I think becomes really helpful. And this is where you as a leader can step in and say like, no, this is essential. This is important. We're not doing this. But some of these other experiments we can kind of cut away. Like, not because I'm against experiments, but it's like we just got to pull back so we can begin knowing what matters most if we don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think something we'll talk about, I'm sure, in future episodes is like, how does technology factor into this? What are things that we can, you know, automate maybe that we maybe aren't doing today? How does AI help us potentially? And then what needs the human aspect? And so, those are all things that I find very interesting topics. And I'm guessing our listeners are probably in some ways wondering about a lot of that too. Like, there's a lot changing very, very fast around us. And how can we kind of take advantage of some of those changes as well? So I'm really, really excited about kind of this direction, this season that we're going into with Beyond the Donation. I think it's going to be something, and I hope that it's, something that opens up the thinking, maybe, and kind of has that challenging, helps people have that challenging mindset around some of these things. So Noah, super excited. Thank you for being willing to do this with me each week. I think we're going to have a lot of fun over the coming weeks here. So
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to keep this practical too. We're trying to set the stage for where we're going and kind of like why we're making this shift and why we're making this change and why now more than ever, we want to come alongside as a guide to you as a nonprofit leader and help surface these types of questions in this inspection, but also keeping it super practical. And so, in the spirit of that, Matt, because I think, this has historically been such a practical podcast, like, what is one thing you would leave? Like, if someone's like, okay, I hear you. Yes, you're setting the stage. We're asking all these existential questions. But like today or this week, what could someone do that would enable them to maybe identify at least and celebrate where they stayed focused on something?
well, I think, the way I would kind of approach that is going back to something you were talking about a little bit ago, and that's understanding, giving yourself grace that that's probably going to be a fairly difficult thought exercise to go through. For me, I have had to, just for example, like, I've had to put like very distinct focus time on my calendar, for example, because I was finding that I was being booked and always had things that I needed to be doing, and that left me very little space to actually get certain types of work done. And so one of the things that I've had to do is kind of give up that I'm always 100% of the time available to be booked to do various things, and really holding out time for myself to have that focus and that work time. That felt difficult for me to do that, to be honest with you, because it felt like, well, I need to be available. I need to be open door policy, all the things. But I have found that by giving up that, almost taking control back of a little bit of my calendar, that has allowed me space every day to be able to, whatever that day's thing is, I don't have to decide that at the beginning of the day. And it's actually something that where this came from is just reading about how some other business leaders kind of try and manage their calendar. And the idea is that I don't know when I wake up today necessarily what the most important thing that I'm going to have to deal with today is, but I've given myself space on the calendar that as the day goes on and I figure that out, that I have the space to do that. So that's just one practical thing that I have found that's worked and kind of helped me. I will put that question back to you. Like what advice would you give?
Yeah, so if you're a solo fundraiser or you're a small team, I think this both applies. Solo, you have to have a little bit more discipline with yourself to do this. But I think if you have a team or even just someone, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's another nonprofit leader that is in your sector. But I would just schedule 20 minutes tomorrow afternoon at whatever the end of day is for you. Put a 20-minute meeting on the calendar. Whether you actually meet or not, it doesn't really matter. But put a 20-minute meeting at the end of the day. The sole purpose is to celebrate what you got done today that really made an impact, or you felt like it made an impact. It could be something super small. I finally replied to the board chair and sent them the updated financials. That's it. And we can celebrate that, like we can celebrate that, like physically celebrate that. It could be something really big. Like I finally finished that grant application that I've been kind of like neglecting. It could be I finally sent the email that we've been saying we're going to send every month, a newsletter or something. It can be I wrote one thank you note to a donor that gave this week. Doesn't matter what it is, to be honest. It's just setting aside time that allows you to celebrate something you accomplished. And if it works for you tomorrow, do it again the next day, and then do it again the next day. Again, giving yourself that space. Again, it doesn't have to be an actual meeting. It could be in Slack or Teams. It could just be like you write down on a sticky note, like what you did and put that there and be like, by the end of the week, I want 3 sticky notes. Like this is where I go back to like the childish joy. Like it's so simple. Like, oh, we give stars on a chart, in elementary school or, preschool. I think we deserve stars too. And I think that's where I'm just like, if I was going to do one thing, I would just put a time on the calendar tomorrow, whether it was with myself, with your colleagues, with your team, with a friend, just to focus only on celebrating what you got done.
I love that.
Because that celebration is contagious. We see that internally. We have a weekly celebration that we just come together as a team for 30 minutes and say, what was one thing you got done this week that really mattered for our customers, future customers, current customers? It really matters. We're going to talk a lot about rhythms and stuff in the future. So I don't want to take away from that. But like tomorrow, celebrate yourself, no matter what.
I love it. All right. Well, I think with that, we're going to wrap up today's episode. We are planning to do these on a weekly cadence, and we'd love for you to join us. If you have thoughts and things that topics you'd like to hear us talk about, or you have questions for us that you'd love for us to answer, please let us know. Leave a review in the platform that you're listening on. Ask us
or comment on
questions,
YouTube.
or comment on YouTube. Exactly. We'd love to take those questions and use them to help guide some of the conversation as well. And as always, we appreciate you taking the time to listen, and we're excited again for this new season of Beyond the Donation. So Noah, I will let you give us the last word here.
Well, first, I want to express gratitude, Matt, for giving me the opportunity to come on and co-host with this. It's going to be fun, and we're going to partner. And I think, in the spirit of this conversation, we should celebrate. This is episode 1 of the new season. And so I'm celebrating that. Also, I just thought about this. If you want to celebrate in the comments on YouTube, just put like, I did blank, blank, and blank this week. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of you too. Like, let's just do it, because I think this isn't intended to be like a woo-woo session or anything like that, but it's just like, the more we begin to practice doing what matters most and acknowledging it, the more we want to do that again and again. The habits are built one by one by one by one. So I'm excited to be able to be on this journey and to kick it off. We got from 0 to 1, Matt,
Yep.
and that's worth celebrating.
I love
And
it.
I hope you'll celebrate us in the comments too. And we look forward to building this community of people focusing.
And with that, we will see you next week, where we will talk more about doing what matters most.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.